I've come to a realization, and it's a really important realization that I want everyone who is trying to book appointments and close deals to pay attention to. If you don't know this and you don't understand this, it's always going to feel like a struggle if you can't book appointments. So this video is for people who are trying to figure out how to schedule appointments for their business or how to close sales for their business. But fundamentally, like, they've been trying it for a long time. They've tested everything. They've tried everything, or so they think, and they just can't seem to get anywhere. They're struggling to book like a couple of appointments a week, let alone, anything. I want you to bear with me here because I'm going to explain a metaphor, and it's then going to help you understand exactly what you need to do and what actions you need to take to make it work. So my name's Charlie Morgan. I am very good at appointment booking. It's probably the thing that I am best at in life, aside from quick scoping on Call of Duty, right? But in all seriousness, I have the ability now to schedule probably about 30 to 100 appointments a day for my business. I know exactly how to do it. I know how to do it with cold email, with inbound systems, with ads. I've been there, I've done that. I've scheduled, probably nearly 10,000 appointments in my life individually. So I want to explain something to you that really helped me accomplish that. Now, you probably don't need 10,000 appointments. You're probably just looking for one a day or something like that if you want to get to 10 grand a month. I've built and scaled 2 companies, an agency to 7 figures called NorthFlow Consulting, and a coaching business to multi-7 figures. We are on the way to 8 figures. This YouTube channel basically allows me to document my journey, my understandings, and also it helps you guys make client acquisition easy, which is ultimately what I want to do. I don't have a 997 course and I don't have a webinar, so let's get started. You're gonna have to bear with me because this is gonna seem like one of those weird, Karate Kid wax on, wax off moments where I'm gonna explain something that probably won't make any sense, and then, as we move through the metaphor, it will start to sort of dawn on you, okay? And I haven't really explained this to many people, so I'm still quite rusty with it, but I think I figured it out. So I have a program, right? I'm not here to sell you it, right? This is not a sales pitch, but I have a high ticket program that teaches agency owners, coaches, consultants how to systemize client acquisition. Once again, I don't want you to click anything. I don't want you to buy anything. It helps me explain the metaphor. I have served probably about 500 people, right? And helped them sort of systemize acquisition. What I've noticed is that an agency owner or a coach or consultant, let's use the niche example, I'm imagining as a MacBook or a computer. A client is like a computer to me. They sign up for the program, and what they're looking to do with the program is download apps in the form of systems. So our clients buy our program to get our acquisition systems. And what we want to imagine is that the client is the computer and the system is an app, because you download an app onto your computer, right? Or something like that. Now, I then want you to imagine that the client's paradigm, the way they perceive and see the world and perceive and see, acquisition, that's their operating software. So all computers obviously come with operating software to run. You can have the best app in the world, right? You can have the most advanced app, the most advanced client acquisition system, which we have, for example. If a computer downloads that app, but their operating software is out of date, or their operating software doesn't run properly, then the computer cannot run the app properly. They might be able to run parts of it. The computer might be able to understand a little part of the app or this little part of the app, but as a whole, it tries to run the app, might work like a little bit, but they don't get like the ultimate experience from the app or what the app was intended to deliver because the operating software can't run it. This is exactly how human beings work. And I'm sure this works in every other realm, but specifically to client acquisition. When someone buys a program from us, what I've noticed, and I've addressed how I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to explain it to you in a second. What I've noticed is like they come in as a computer, right? And they want to get the apps, the systems, so they go and watch the videos. They explain how the systems work. They take the knowledge of the videos and then they start executing on that. A lot of the time they get good results because the systems are so easy to follow. But sometimes people have operating softwares that aren't very good. And what I mean by operating software is paradigm. And what do I mean by paradigm? Because this is a strange word that I keep throwing around. So paradigm is basically your worldview, but you can actually localize a paradigm to a specific discipline or, subject of reality. So if we take client acquisition as a part of reality, how you perceive client acquisition will determine how you behave and make decisions in accordance to it. And what I mean by that is if you don't have a collection of mental models that allow you to properly reference client acquisition, then all the decisions and actions that you make and take, regardless of how good the systems are, will be skewed and flawed. It's kind of like everyone shiny objects their way to the copy. It's like, this is the most obvious sign of this is when someone says, Charlie, all I need you to give me is the Loom script and the email copy you use and I'll be fine. And it's like, there's way more to building systems and running a bulletproof, like consistent, what would you even call it, like mechanism in your business than just having the copy. The copy doesn't really move the needle. You might think it does because you might think that's the biggest problem. But there's so much more to it. When it comes to paradigm, I've basically built a series of modules called Acquisition Genesis for the new program we're releasing. And in this module, and once again, no sale, but in this module, basically it's a 19-hour sort of program, mini program. It took me 6 600 hours to produce. So what that means is that for every hour of content a client watches around the paradigm training, I've put about 30 hours of work in. And that's not really a joke. It took me about 3 or 4 months to make, maybe a little bit less than that, but it was hell on earth to produce. In this training, basically, there's a couple of things you need to understand. I'm going to give you like a high level view of what you need to introduce to your paradigm in order for you to be successful with client acquisition. So it's very straightforward. I'm going to tell you a few things, and then what I want you to do is just go and watch basic YouTube videos on these things and ask yourself, how can these disciplines or ideas from these disciplines actually apply to client acquisition? And it's going to be one of those things like I said at the beginning, it's the wax on, wax off Karate Kid sort of thing, where like you're going to look at it and think, how the hell does that thing that I learned in year 9 of school, like how does that apply to client acquisition? But I'm going to explain. So there's a few things you need to understand. I'm even going to pull up my laptop here. So the first thing you need to understand is biology in the form of a niche, right? We all know how niches work, but if you understand biology and functional roles, you can understand how niches work and how businesses perform. So functional roles or niching from biology is one discipline you have to understand. The next thing you need to understand is first principle thinking. And you need to also understand multidisciplinary thinking. If you understand multidisciplinary thinking and first principles thinking, you'll understand what I'm trying to say with all of this stuff, basically. The next thing, and probably the big one, you need to understand systems theory, and you also need to understand systems thinking. Those are two massive disciplines in and of themselves, but all you need to do is understand the core central thesis or core central ideas of those individual things, right? So systems theory, systems thinking, and functional roles. This is where it gets quite exciting. This is my favorite part. So we need to understand something called common descent. These are biological terms. Common descent and descent with modification. Those are two ideas that if understood and applied will make sense to you. You also need to understand things in biology like natural selection and how that relates to fitness, traits, genotypes, variations, fractals. Fractals is a big one, right, to understand how scale works, essentially. It also really helps to understand the scientific method. It also helps to understand virology and how bacteria duplicate. And this is all fucking weird. I know that like you're thinking like, Charlie, how, like, what the fuck? But what you can see here is I've actually dedicated a lot of my life to making this work. So this is a 3 hour and 12 minute video on basically Darwinism and natural selection. Same here, if I show you another one of these examples, this is a 3 hour video on systems, right? So like, I'm not just saying this as like some sort of like weird thing, oh, you just need to understand systems. Like I've actually spent hundreds of hours explaining these principles to my beloved clients so they can instill their paradigms properly. Because once you have your paradigm lined, like once you can actually see acquisition for what it is, all of your actions and behaviors in accordance to it and in it and around it make so much more sense because you can actually operate properly. It's like trying to build a client acquisition system without understanding systems and biology is like trying to drive a car blind. It's like you can't see the road. You can't see what turns to take. You can't see when to stop. You can't see when to speed up. You can't see what's in front of you. You're blind. And like metaphorically speaking, obviously you have sight and you have vision. But in terms of your consciousness and your paradigm, if you don't know these disciplines and you're trying to make decisions around acquisition, like what's best? Because that's really all it is. If you want to build a client acquisition system, all you've got to do is make a series of correct decisions. And the only way to be right and correct is to understand the true objective nature of the thing you're dealing with. Because if you understand the true objective nature of it and can explain it through models from other things that are way more concrete, like biology, then you can make decisions and stack those decisions on top of each other. And if they're all right, bang, your clients will just come to you like there's no tomorrow. So that's an important lesson in critical thinking. What else do we have? So you also need to understand stoicism, rationality, and reason. It also helps to understand ego and Freudian psychology, and also Carl Jungian psychology. Now, the other big one is understanding psychology. If you don't understand, client acquisition is applied psychology. And it's like, and if you don't realize that, it's like, well, how the hell does psychology help me with client acquisition? What does client acquisition mean? It means getting people to buy things from you. What is a person? They are basically a psychological entity. What is getting someone to do something? It's persuasion. It's applied psychology. If you don't realize that, then you're going to be in some massive trouble. If you actually observe it, client acquisition, booking appointments, closing, client acquisition doesn't really exist. It's not a discipline. You can't point to it like you can point to biology or chemistry or physics. It doesn't have core fundamental principles because a discipline exists when there are rules that apply to it. But client acquisition, there are no rules, except all the rules in it come from external disciplines. So client acquisition is this sort of weird arbitrary term that has been coined, but you can only really explain it, and it can only really be explained by, and it can only be truly understood by bringing in disciplines, other disciplines to make it work. So it's a weird way of looking at it, but that's the next thing. So psychology, if you don't understand cognitive biases, you're also going to be in some trouble. And then the last one is system design itself, standard operating procedures and stuff like that. But like, you know, we've got here, this one is 2 hours and 29 minutes long. It's called Asymmetric Psychological Leverage. And it walks clients through 88 cognitive biases that they need to know to acquire clients. Like 88 pieces of leverage that you can use about the human mind to get people to do what you want. It's like, if you don't know these things, if you don't know the nature of the mind and how you can use the nature of the mind to get people to do what you want, it's very hard to get clients. It's all cause and effect. It all makes sense if you actually have a good paradigm. You also need to understand metrics and statistics. If you don't understand what regression to the mean is, for example, you're pretty much buggered. If you don't understand things like game theory, you're also going to be in for some, you know, for some trouble. In short, if you want to understand how client acquisition works, and if you want to make it as easy as possible, you need to be able to see it. Because if I ask you right now, can you explain to me the nature of client acquisition? What is it? Most people at their first answer will say, well, it's getting clients. And then it's like, well, what does that mean? What encapsulates getting clients? It's like, well, it's getting people to do things you want. And then it's like, okay, well, that's just psychology. But it can't be that, because surely if everyone who understood psychology, they'd get clients. So it's like, okay, well, I guess it's also about like having a system. And I guess it's also about like finding the right thing that works. Oh, so now we introduce systems thinking, systems theory, the scientific method. And do you know who's really fucking good at finding what works? Nature. So if we understand natural selection and we understand how that works, we can observe how over billions of years, nature has optimized, you know, DNA and gene codes to produce humans, probably like the most advanced and optimized organism for the environment. But if we understand how nature accomplished that, we can understand how we can accomplish that on a much shorter time frame with our bloody email copy. I'm going to stop ranting, but I wish people understood this, and I wish people knew this in more depth. And I know that this new module I've done, this new sort of mini course for clients, which we're releasing with the second version of my program, this is going to change the whole game for people, because if they actually understand it and they go through it, and the only problem is it's very long. There's videos in there that like, you know, 3.5 hours long. But if people actually pay attention to it, client acquisition, whoosh, you're done. Like, all you then got to do is just think, oh, okay, I know exactly what to do. You can also do this for service delivery. Same thing, if you ask her, what service delivery? What disciplines apply to that? What sales? What disciplines apply to that? You have to understand this stuff. If you are struggling to get clients and you really just don't want to Google a bunch of stuff, you can always just click the first thing in the description. There's no webinars, no 997 course. It's just a video of me explaining how we help people acquire clients, and you might be able to get yourself hands on what I've just showed you. It wasn't really my intention. I actually wanted to add some value and explain, but you know, you might want the option. Subscribe if you're new, like if you liked it, comment anything below. See you in the next one. Cheers.